Turkey does not like to take orders from any other countries, period. This is a crucial point in diplomatic psychology that the Western world was never able to understand in their foreign policies with any country, including Turkey. This foreign policy that I call especially from Washington, D.C. of my way or highway worked very well in the past by positioning their chosen corrupt leaders versus these countries accepting the superiority of the West or their blue eyes. We can observe this over the past 100 years when the U.S. and the European countries exercised a policy of threat and military superiority to force all the other countries, including Turkey. Let's not forget as well that as much as the U.S. and Europe seem like the best friends of the world, they have serious competition, and this was the main reason for building the EU as a counterbalance for the GATT against the U.S. dictating its rules and winning the economic wars. As much as Africa has been ruled by corrupt leaders on the payroll of the U.S., the U.K., France, Belgium, Portugal, and Holland as colonialist and esclavage psychology, the same was done with countries like Turkey, India, China, and the Middle East in general by using organizations like the CIA, MI6, IMF, and the World Bank. If we look at the history of Turkey after the assassination of Ataturk, I call it assassination because he was poisoned and he did not die of sickness as described in all the official books, to the last 10 years of Erdogan, Turkey's leaders, and the army generals were on the payroll of the U.S. This is a fact, and some might feel offended in Turkey, but we need to look at things directly and not lie about it. This was also the reason that Ataturk was assassinated, because he opposed the plans made by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. When I mention these two families, it is because still today the world is ruled at the top of the pyramid, that I call it as well the cabal. The U.S., which is in reality the Rockefellers, never wanted Turkey to become an energy independent and an oil-rich nation because they knew the Turkish psychology that if they were economically well-to-do, nobody could have blackmailed and forced them to obey the orders coming from the West. There is a major shift in Turkey after the coup of 2016 where the U.S. tried to take down or warned Erdogan with a failed coup. I have a Machiavellian view of things, and I do not believe in anything at face value. This would be a long discussion on who was behind the coup of 2016 and especially the why. Erdogan has turned into a chess master in foreign policy that puts everyone on the other side of the board in a checkmate position. The US, the UK, and the EU never expected this performance and capability from Turkey and Erdogan. They tried everything, and they are still trying to get back and take over the commands of Turkey, and they are still struggling. This is the colonialist superiority complex of the West that cannot accept that other non-Anglo-Saxon nations could be intelligent and strong enough to beat them in their own game. The criticism of Turkey buying as a NATO member S-400s from Russia is very hypocritical and lying about the story of how they pushed Turkey to get closer to Russia and purchase these defense products. Initially, the Obama administration, influenced by Israel, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, opposed selling the Patriot missiles to Turkey. They thought that Turkey, like in the past, was going to take it and accept this decision. This was a wake-up call for the Turkish leader and pushed them to look for alternatives to defend the Turkish airspace, which had no protection against Greece, Israel, and the U.S. They shopped around with China and Russia. They discovered that the S-400s were in reality a more performant product compared to the Patriots. As a consequence of the forced decision from Turkey to purchase the S-400s, Washington imposed new sanctions against Turkey and as a punishment took Turkey out of the F-35 program. This was a blessing for Turkey in the same way as the refusal of Turkey's membership in the EU. Turkey had paid close to $2 billion to the U.S. for the F-35s, and still today this money has not been reimbursed. Sanctions have been a blessing for Turkey that forced them to become independent and build their own military-industrial complex instead of being a third-class nation begging for weapons from the West, and specifically from the U.S., which was always putting conditions and controlling the usage of these weapons electronically from the Pentagon. Erdogan and Turkey were very successful thanks to the new young and well-educated engineers in Turkey to build world-class weapons and drones that became a game-changer in several conflicts, including now in Africa where the French, the U.S., and the UK are being kicked out. This is another long discussion about Africa and its history, but in short, China, Russia, and Turkey are replacing the colonialist powers and their corporation that have been exploiting Africa and the Africans. Today, Turkey can produce over 85% of its military needs, and soon it will be able to accomplish 100% when they will fly their fifth-generation fighter jets with Turkish-made engines. I predict by 2030, for all the missiles including the equivalent to the S-400s, and the Patriots are now locally manufactured by Turkish engineers. We all know the accomplishments of the Turkish drones that are capable of using locally manufactured missiles. In the past, only U.S.-made missiles were able to be used on the F-16s. This represented a double-edged sword in forcing Turkey to buy U.S.-made missiles and being controlled as well by the same U.S. usage of these missiles. If the Pentagon does not want Turkey to fire from its F-16 a missile against a specific enemy, it would not be able to trigger with an electronic control mechanism. Any country that has purchased the F-35s is well to the mercy of the U.S. If Washington does not want your F-35s to take off, you would be stuck on the ground. I am very surprised that anyone would accept these conditions. The U.S. has never been a democratic nation as much as it has been using the rhetoric of democracy to invade anyone not obeying its orders. The moral of this F-35 saga has been very beneficial for Turkey by not purchasing this very expensive fighter jet that turned out to be a total lemon. Going back to the core of my discussion, Turkey has become another powerful nation at the level to negotiate and compete with the U.S. and EU. The geographic strategic position of Turkey is now surpassed by its technological advancements and underground natural resources that have always been there but never authorized by the U.S. to be exploited, like oil, gas, barium, and thorium. Turkey is working in cooperation with Russia in several areas, including in the building of nuclear centers to generate electricity, which its demand is rising at an exponential rate. I predict Turkey will join the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS. Turkey will play a major role in the Silk Road, going from Pekin to London via Turkey in the same manner as the oil and gas pipelines. Turkey is building its own NATO with the Turkic nations that represent a population of 300 million people. This will represent a new balance of power in Asia and the Middle East that all the players will have to acknowledge and play according to these changes. I see the US and the EU losing their old domination, but I predict the real power held by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds will still dominate the planet and its people as slaves. Wars are a business, and the military-industrial congressional complex decides and creates. If you ever think that the war in Ukraine and Gaza happened by accident, you will need to change your glasses. If you look at our world at a macro level, like the one sitting on top of the pyramid, you will see better the why of each event, including government changes and the latest fake news distributed by the corrupt media, which is owned by corporations like BlackRock to brainwash the general population and attract their attention on useless events, including Hollywood-made movies produced and distributed by the same cabal. As a final touch to this essay, I would like to bring your attention to a fundamental strategy/game played by the same cabal. The US, Russia, and China are not enemies as much as they promoted for many years. They are partners at the very top, and they all take their marching orders from the same cabal. Maybe if you think that going to Mars will liberate you from being a slave, think again. I always say, death is the only equalizer.